So let us look at what is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and what are the roles they do in front-end web development. The first one, you see, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Okay, you see the color in that characters in blue, HTML. That's how the abbreviation is created. So this HTML is used for defining the structure of the web page. So analogous is like all of us human beings, we have the bones inside our body, right? So these bones, the structure, so these bones and how they are arranged, how they are connected to each other, and where they are placed, where the top, bottom, or middle. So this defines like our human skeleton. So human skeletons defines the structure of our human body. Similarly, HTML is used to define the structure of a web page. And let's come to JavaScript. JavaScript, they are like, so see, once you have the skeleton, so that's not makes you a complete man. You need to have muscles, because muscles are the ones which actually, when they contract or expand, that will cause the movement of the bones or the limbs. And so analogously, JavaScript, if you have to do dynamically update in a web page, some portion of a web page, or if you need interactivity with the user, and that is where we need JavaScript. And the last one is CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So we'll just understand once we are discussing about CSS, then in the later modules I'll explain what the cascading means. But for now, just remember it's a cascading style sheet. As the name suggests, you can say the style sheet. So these are the sheets or files which will define the styling of the HTML page. So using this CSS, you can define or you can design the presentation or styling of the web page. Analogously, just like if you have skeletons and muscles, probably on top of it you have skin to cover the muscles, and then so that's not good enough. So you have to present it in a decent, in a professional manner to the end user. So on that body, if you put proper dress, tie, and shoes, okay, and that's when the human body becomes presentable to others. And CSS exactly does that presentation on top of HTML web pages. Okay, so these are the fundamental roles played by HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Because this is very fundamental, and you need to understand what each one is capable of doing it. Note that since HTML is for defining the structure of the page, and you have to use HTML strictly for defining the structure of the page. Note that there will be some tags in HTML which are deprecated, or which are like, for example, styling is like putting something as bold. Okay, that is styling. So there might be some tags, but as far as possible, you should not use that unless otherwise necessary. But most of the time, if you have to do styling, then you have to use only CSS. That is a recommended practice. Some of you said that again, what is the professional way of doing the programming? So this is one of the tip. So any styling, you have to do it completely in CSS and not in the HTML, because HTML is only for structure. If it is not a structure, if you are doing styling in HTML, then you are doing something wrong. So then remove from the HTML and then move it into CSS to do the which does the styling. Yeah, let's look at, see, we talk about HTML, right? HTML stands for the Hypertext Markup Language. That's what we said. So what does this hypertext means? Okay, so hypertext. So as you can see, one gentleman here on the right hand side, the picture, his name is Vannevar Bush. He came up this idea of hypertext way back in 1995. So basically, this hypertext is it's just a normal text which has got references. References are called hyperlinks to other text. So you might be wondering what does hyper means. So hyper and hypo, these are some terms which are used in technology and as well as on the medicine field as well by doctors. So hyper means something over and beyond. Hypo means which is lesser and below. So hypertext means, so the text is a text which is over and beyond a plain text is called hypertext. That's a simple. So what is something over and beyond is here this text has got, you can embed the links to other text inside this text. So that's what is a hypertext. Yeah, and so you see him on the right hand side of this slide, one gentleman. His name is Tim Berners-Lee. He is considered to be the father of the World Wide Web. What we see as www, which is World Wide Web, he is the father of it. So he actually, when he was working in CERN, which is a nuclear research institute in Switzerland, he's actually a British citizen, but he was working in Switzerland on this nuclear research project. Whenever he has any research findings, he has to share it with the rest of his colleagues inside his research organization. At that time, he came up with the idea of what is called World Wide Web, wherein he borrowed the concept of hypertext, and then he created a text which has got links to other texts. That's how you can have a main page. From main page, if you have some description of some of your research findings or something, if you want to know more about some topic, you click on the link or hyperlink, so it will take you to the next page. And when you are reading about that, let's say if you want to know more about another topic, click on that link on another page, it will take you another page. So basically, you can move from one page to another page. Like this, the pages are linked through what is called hyperlinks. In HTML, those hyperlinks are called anchors. Okay, so anchors are defined using A tags. So we'll come to that later. So he came up with World Wide Web way back in 1995. So that's when he created the first World Wide Web using HTML version 2.0, and that became later a standard called IETF RFC 1866. So IETF, I'll show you IETF. Yeah, go to Google and you try IETF. So IETF is Internet Engineering Task Force. So this is a standardization body which defines the standards for the web, and before the web they were defining the standards, like for example anything you do on the web now, so it has been defined as an IETF standard. Like for example, we use for sending emails, we use what is called Simple Message Transfer Protocol, SMTP. That is defined by IETF. And all this SMTP and even World Wide Web runs on what is called TCP/IP stack. You know, right? TCP/IP stack. So TCP stands for Transmission Control Protocol, and IP is Internet Protocol. So this TCP/IP is also standardized by IETF. Like for all these protocols which is required for the internet are defined by IETF, and so those IETF, like for example IETF HTML RFC. If you type in like this, so it will take you to IETF documents, and so here is the place where you can get all the IETF standards. Like for example, I'll go back and you can see RFC 1866. So you can see here hypertext markup language. This is 2.0 version, and so he's the author, Tim Berners-Lee, and so you should look for category standards track, means it has been standardized. So if it's anything other than standard, this standards track, then it is still work in progress, or it will have different meanings. Okay, this means it's been standardized by IETF. So like that, so all these web-related, internet-related protocols have been standardized by IETF. And as I said, Tim Berners-Lee first developed the web page in HTML 2.0 way back in 1995. And later came version 3.2 in January 1997. Later, there's another for standardizing the standards related to World Wide Web. There's a separate consortium called W3. W3 stands for WWW, 3 W's. That's why they shortened as W3. World Wide Web Consortium. C stands for consortium. So all these HTML standards later on passed, rather than IETF doing, now IETF passed on the buck to W3C consortium to define the standards for the web, and they started focusing on other protocols. And then came briefly version 4.0 in December 97. Note that between 3.2 and 4.0 there is only less than a year time frame. And later in 99 December they standardized version 4.01. The most of the websites and most of the browsers will be based on version 4.01 as of today. So unless it's a very old website, like almost like how many 17 years old, only then it will be like 4.0. But if it is something like 15 years old, and it will be more or less on 4.01. So whenever I say HTML, it means HTML 4.01. And note that version 4.01 is supported by all the browsers like Chrome, Firefox, IE, Opera, Safari. All the browsers support reasonably very well, almost like 95 to 99, even 100%. It varies from one browser to another browser. But the recent development has been version 5.0, which was standardized just a few months ago. That is 28th October 2014. It's been standardized by W3C consortium. And actually, there has been a lot of debate going on when this HTML5 will get standardized. Some people are saying that it will get standardized in way back in 2020 or 2022. But luckily, it didn't take that far. It's been standardized just last year in October. It's a great sign. So since it's been standardized now, all the vendors and the web companies, they'll have the more reason to move on to from version 4.01 to version 5. So that will make very sense that now you are taking the right step for registering this course, and now you are now a part of elite club of who will be familiar with HTML5, CSS-3 and JavaScript. Because from now on, most of the companies will be doing a lot of web development projects, moving on to HTML 5.0 and CSS3. And even these companies, the browser vendors also, will be adding more features and become more and more compliant with HTML5 and CSS3. Yeah, so now let's look at what is a HTML page. So you might be hearing different terms like HTML page, HTML document, web page, web document. All of them refer to the same thing. It's just like a different way of saying the same thing. So that's why I used all the terms, all the combination you can use. HTML document, HTML page, anything. All mean the same. Okay. So HTML page, basically, it is a user interface for the web, or website, or an application. It could be a web application or a website. So there's a slight difference between website and web application. So websites, generally, its main purpose is to provide some information to the end user. Whereas web application is, it will do some job for you on the web. Like for example, just best example is like, for example, the Gmail. Gmail is not a website, it's actually web application. Because once you log into the Gmail, it will basically help you achieve certain objective, or it will do some task for you. That is editing an email and then sending an email and receiving an email. So since it does some work for you, like MS Word is doing, like using MS Word, you are creating some document. You can edit document, you can and you can print the document, right? So that is a native application, whereas here Gmail is a web application. Basically, both website and web application, they'll have some user interface. Note that both website and web application, both of them need all the three components: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, but need of these three components is very high in web application, but low in a website. But both of them require all these three components. Yeah, then you can be wondering, what is HTML page? See, HTML page is just a plain text file. It's human readable. You can read it. Okay, we'll start writing HTML code immediately after these slides. So generally, these HTML web pages are transported using a protocol HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This HTTP protocol runs on top of TCP/IP. So HTTP is called Application Level Protocol. So TCP is called Net Transport Protocol. IP is called Network Protocol. If you are familiar with ISO standards, 7 layers of protocol standard, then so this HTTP stands will be running. It maps to layer 5 to layer 7 of ISO 7 layer application model. Yeah. So an HTML page can be of two types. So one is the static type. Static means so the content of this web page does not change. Whether it is sending to 1 user or 100 users or 1000 users, the content remains the same across all the users. That's what we mean by static pages. So they are the ready-made pages with some fixed content. Generally, these static web pages are created using .html or .htm. Olden days, people are using .htm, but a better way to do is .html. So there is a better extension to have these files. Note that every HTML file should have the file extension as .html only. Only then browser will understand what is there inside the file is HTML, and that's how it will start rendering as a HTML page. If you don't use this extension, then it will think that okay, it is not HTML page, and it will try to render it as a plain text file. Okay, that we'll see it later. And then another type of web page is called dynamic web page. So the dynamic web page, the whole HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It means so you'll basically there will be some PHP script or some JavaScript in case of Node.js, or some other script will run on the web browser, and as an output of that executing of that script will generate the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript output, which will be sent to the browser. So when you are developing the content, like note that since you are generating this content, the what we call customized content, the content which user is interested in, only to that user, but the same content will not be seen by other users, and the second user will see his own customized content. So since each user will be seeing most probably different content, that's why it is called dynamic web page. Dynamic in the sense it is generated on the fly. When you send a request to the web browser, it will create it then and there at that moment, and it will send it to you. Whereas HTML, the static web pages are created once and they are stored in the web server, and every time the same content is served. Whereas a dynamic web page, the content is not saved. It is generated on the fly as and when required. And basically in a dynamic web page, you will have some JavaScript. It might have been coded in a JavaScript language or PHP, JSP, or ASP. So JSP stands for JavaScript, Java Server Pages. ASP stands for Active Server Pages. Active Server Pages is, let's say, if you are doing creating dynamic pages on Windows platforms, then you need ASP. And JSP is a little open source which runs on multiple platforms. But PHP is one of the most trusted way of creating the web pages. Even companies like Facebook, LinkedIn, they also use PHP. But companies like Google, I think they may have some part of PHP, but Google is more towards generating the pages dynamically using Python. So this P, even note that it could be done in PHP or Perl or in Python. So that this P, note that all PHP, Python, Perl, that P is P of last letter of the WAMP stack or LAMP stack. That's what P stands for. Note that depending upon whether it's coded in JavaScript or PHP, the file extensions also will differ. In case of PHP, it is .php, JSP, ASP, and ASPX. Okay. So note that the extension is the only thing that tells the browser or the web server that okay, what script, what is the language in which the coding has been done. Yeah, website is just a process. Website is just a group of one or more HTML pages. Okay, it could be just, you can have a website with only one page, or you can have more than one page. So main thing is, if you have more than one page, first page is always called home page. First page that is displayed to the end user, that is called home page. That home page is also called a default page, and it is generally coded as it is stored inside a file called index.html or index.php and so on. So generally index is the one which uniquely identifies. If you don't specify any default HTML page, then browser will assume index.html or index.php. It will look for one of these two files, and if it is present where it is looking for, and it will render that page. It will send that page web server. And as whatever it receives from the web server, the web browser will just render that page. That's all. But this index.html, index.php, these are the files which you need to store on the web server. Okay. So note that all other pages, if the website contains more than one page, all other pages should be navigable. Means you should be able to go from this default page to all other pages. If you are not able to go to, basically let's say if you have 10 pages, from the first page, you should be able to reach to any of the remaining 9 pages. Only then, so it forms a complete web page. Let's say if you have some pages which you cannot go from this main page or other subsequent pages which you are navigated to, then it is like a, it's unused page, which you can as well remove it because nobody can reach those pages. And note that this HTML, when I say website, means it is basically, think of it as a one or more HTML pages. Okay. Note that for now I just said HTML pages, but it is composed of even CSS and JavaScript files as well. But just for simplicity, I'll just call, when I say HTML page, it will combine all the three: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Note that a website will be visible. A website can be visited by an end user from a browser only if it is serviced by a web server. Web server is just a process which runs on a machine on the network. On the network means on the web, to the public World Wide Web. So basically it's just a process. In case of Linux, it is a process by name HTTPD, or it could be Apache 2. This is just a process name in Linux. And if it is a Windows machine, it will be inet manager, internet manager.exe file, which is actually Internet Information Server. This is the web server which is provided by Microsoft. So it could be one of these pages. And it could be like, there are other web servers as well. There is an Nginx server and a Glassfish server and so on. So basically the purpose of these web servers is to serve the web pages to the end users. End users will be running browsers. And note that end users will be not only the human users, even like companies like Google who will be crawling the web. So they'll be running automatic programs called the web bots. Bot is a robot, web robot. It's called just bot, web bots. Those web bots basically send a request to the web server for the pages, and web server will send the pages back to those bots. Those bots will collect those web pages and store the information on their disk. And once it is all the web pages are stored, Google will run another process to do the indexing, and then make it available to people like us. So that's when we can search for information on the Google website. So those web bots also are the users of our clients of web servers. And I said, the web server could also be an application server, which is like Apache Tomcat, which is open source, or it could be some licensed software like IBM WebSphere. So these are application servers. Note that difference between, like, see, application server is the another process in which you can write like applications in Java applications. That's called Java web application, and in which you can do much more complicated things which are not possible using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you are even complicated logic, you need to write in Java and then run it inside the Tomcat and WebSphere application servers. So note that even these application servers, the output of them, these application servers also is again HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, and next is, note that all these web pages are serviced, are sent to the end users on TCP/IP. TCP, as I said, it's Transmission Control Protocol, which is a layer 4 protocol, and IP is Internet Protocol, which is layer 3 protocol. So on top of TCP/IP, our HTTP runs. So on using HTTP protocol, so our web pages are sent. So this is you can see here. See, by default, earlier, these browsers, they're displaying the protocol are here, like HTTP. So if you see all these protocols, right? If you see here, so this is the protocol on which it is sending. So yeah, so by default, I think since HTTP is by default understood, so they are not displaying in the web browser that URL. So a secure version of HTTP is called HTTPS, secure version. So nowadays, most of the internet companies, they're hosting their websites on HTTPS because to make it more secure for the users who are visiting their websites. Especially HTTPS will be used by the financial companies, where you do the financial transactions. It has to be secure, and nobody should tamper with those financial transactions. That's why it runs on HTTPS. HTTPS, one difference is any transaction, any communication that happens between your browser and web server is done on a secure encrypted channel, so that anyone who is tapping onto the wire or wireless or wirelessly or wirelinely, so they will not be, even if they get tap into your network, they will not be able to understand what you are transacting. So it will be totally illegible to them, and they will not be able to decrypt it. So that's why it will be more secure. Like as I said, most of the companies, especially Google, also, like you see here, Citrix is using HTTPS, and so here you see if you don't say any protocol, means it's HTTP, plain HTTP, and this is this is also HTTP, and yeah, this is my demo. Yeah, like for example, Gmail uses HTTPS, and even if you go to LinkedIn. So like for example, the HDFC, which is the bank. So let it come. See here, initially it is on HTTP. Once you log in, then it will change to HTTPS. Okay. Yeah, note that the default port on which the web server will be listening for the HTTP request is on port 80. For HTTPS, that is secure protocol, it runs on port number 443 is for HTTPS, whereas for HTTP it is port 80. And note that these web servers or web application servers could be running on any of the platforms. It could be Windows, Linux, Mac OS, anything, any OS which can run a process. So if you have a source code of that HTTP or application server, you can just compile it and then start running it. So a website will consist of these components, mainly a web server, which is a process, active process which is running, and it will serve the web pages. So web page could be a static web page or a dynamic web page.